In the banking sector, BNP has managed to capitalise on the woes at Fortis. The French bank is buying Fortis banking businesses in Belgium and Luxembourg for €9 billion. It's paying a further €5.5 billion for the insurance business. BNP chief executive Baudouin Pro says his bank will emerge from this crisis triumphant.
In this very, very difficult period, the BNP Paribas, from a capital perspective, from a rating perspective, from a funding and from an earning capacity, has become stronger and stronger every quarter. And I think that after this acquisition, we'll see in a few months that BNP Paribas clearly appears, getting out of the lot and certainly one of the key winners of the banking industry in Europe and in the world.
So governments around Europe are moving to shore up their banks, but is intervention like that we saw in the United States really the only way to recapitalise the banks? Let's continue this discussion. Nouriel Roubini is chairman of RGEmonitor.com and he joins us now. Nouriel, thank you very much for coming to talk to us. The US bailout plan was of course presented as a do it or don't do it option because time was very much of the essence. Do you think then that Europe should not go down that route?
Well, Europe might need to bail out its own financial institutions, but what the U.S. plan suggests is that if the plan is not well designed, and the U.S. plan was not well designed, it does not improve market confidence. After the Senate passed this plan last Wednesday, markets fell 4% on Thursday, and after the House passed this bill on Friday, stock prices fell another 3% in the afternoon of Friday, and today they're down 5 or 6% in the United States. So this particular plan doesn't address the fundamental problem right now. There's a crisis of confidence and there is a liquidity run against all the liabilities of the banks, of the non-banks, and of the corporate sector. And this is the most radical thing happening right now that has to be addressed right now.
Nouriel, obviously the US has gone down the road of, as you say, talking about buying toxic assets. Maybe Europe needs to go down the road of actually recapitalizing banks, injecting money into the banking system. If you were to construct a plan for Europe, what would it look like?
Well, you're absolutely right. The mistake in the U.S. plan is that buying the toxic assets without recapitalizing the banks and without also doing a triage between solvent and insolvent banks and without reducing the face value of these debts for the household sector is not going to make any difference. So a key component of any banking crisis resolution has to be a recapitalization of the banking system. That's missing in the U.S. plan. Usually it happens in the form of the government injecting public capital, preferred shares in the banking system, then by provision of capital by the private tier 1 capital and or suspension of dividends. That's what needs to be done in the U.S. That's what needs to be done.
Nouriel, sorry, we seem to be having a little bit of a trouble with your line. I'll continue. We'll persevere and hope that it re-establishes a good connection. Reading some of your commentary of late, Nouriel, it seems that there was plenty of precedent, really, for tackling some kind of banking crisis and what to do about bad assets. Do you think, then, perhaps that authorities in the US and in Europe are not really learning from the past as much as they could do?
Absolutely. There are dozens of banking crises in the past, and it's pretty standard what you do, and buying toxic assets is not the right way of recapitalizing the banking system. The traditional way in which it's done is the government injecting capital in the form of either preferred shares or common shares or subordinated debt, matched by a private sector contribution as well. That's what needs to be done in the U.S. They rushed through the job in the Congress. They didn't consult professional experts of banking crisis, and they've done a lousy job in the U.S. And hopefully Europe can learn from that mistake and do it right.
Nouriel, thank you very much for joining us. Nouriel Roubini joining us from RGEmonitor.com.